Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to episode 4 of the South Jersey Starting Nine podcast, your number one place for baseball news, information, predictions, whatever may have you in South New Jersey. I'm Dan Wilkins, joined by my wonderful co host, David Cohen. As always, it is nice and sunny outside, and we are getting a nice mid afternoon recording in. Some information for you today. We are not airing this episode live. This is being recorded at right around 2 p.m. on February 4th. This should air at around 5 o'clock the same day. Just with how our schedules worked out, it worked better to record earlier in the day. And since most of the kids are still in school and most of the parents are still at work, made sense to push back a little bit here in our fourth episode of the series. We do have some news, and then finally, after we get past that, we are going to go into previews. High school baseball first practice is only about a month away, so we'll be 2 or 3 episodes deeper by the time players first hit the diamond for the 2026 high school season. But we do have some tidbits of information that we're going to go into, and we're going to go into a lot of it, starting with the BCSL. We're going to go through that, and then in our next episode, it'll most likely be the Cal and then the Colonial. It'll be alphabetical through the 5 South Jersey conferences: the BCSL, the Cal, Colonial, Olympic, and then Tri-County. So there will be a lot for us to work with going into March, and a lot of our predictions are going to go into March. And we're getting ever so closer to the start of the season. I can just feel it every single day. I can just feel it getting closer, and it's quite exciting.
Sure is. I walked outside today, and you could feel it. The sun was out. The snow was finally starting to melt and give way to spring. Even though that stupid groundhog said 6 more weeks of winter, we're getting the baseball season, and it's going to be a fun one.
Has that groundhog ever been right?
Somebody did like a prediction or like a thing on it, and I think it was like 47% of the time or something like that. He was right.
47% of the time. So that's less accurate than literally flipping a coin.
Yeah,
And that saves me from traveling 4 hours out in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, to go see a
it's a,
groundhog.
it's a big thing out there. They get out there early, partying.
Yeah, that sounds like a problem. I mean, if you're going out to party at Pennsylvania at 4 o'clock in the morning before the sun rises to see a rodent, see his shadow, I really think you need a better hobby. But like hosting a South Jersey baseball podcast, you really need something better to do with your time. But we will have a lot to do with our time in the middle of June, and I'll tell you why. New Jersey baseball, their state championships have been moved to Rutgers. Bainton Field in Piscataway, home of the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, will host the 2026 and most likely beyond baseball state championships. Now, of course, Rutgers has been making a very clear and public push to get the NJSIAA state championships for as many sports as they can onto the campus of Rutgers University. They already host a handful of football games. They share that responsibility with MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, and they already host all basketball games for men and women, or for boys and girls in high school case, at Jersey Mike's Arena. So it'll be interesting to see how this works. It'll be interesting to see how this is going to affect the state championship. But I think generally, from what I've seen online and from what I've heard from coaches, this is a well applauded and a positive move.
Yeah, agreed. Coaches, from what I've read as well, they like this move. It's a bigger venue, and Rutgers isn't actually. I read an article from NJ.com. Rutgers is not going to charge to get into a thing like Veterans Park did in Hamilton Township, but coaches wanted a bigger venue. They want the kids to get experience at a college baseball field. They're getting that now, and with the stuff that happened in the last 2 years at Veterans Park with the lights, town audience thing, and a lot of rainouts there. You kind of saw this coming, and they moved to a turf field where maybe you wash out those rainouts and you can play a little longer because of the turf field.
Yeah, I'm certainly a fan of them using a turf field for this, and they're using the best option that they can have. It's a venue in Central Jersey that's not too far for either North Jersey or South Jersey schools, and really anybody involved. It's going to be good because it's New Jersey's biggest university. There's nothing bigger. It's not like when you go to, let's say, if you go to Florida, you could go to University of Florida, you could go to Miami, you could go to UCF or Jacksonville State, a whole bunch of Division One schools there, but there is only one Power Five school in New Jersey, and it's Rutgers. And I do like the move. Have you ever played on turf during your high school career? Did you get a
Yeah,
chance?
Eastern. That was
Okay, yeah, Eastern. I think we talked about this. I
Bordentown.
think we talked about this before.
Yeah,
We
when we
talked
did it. Yep.
about how the hops are a little bit different for infielders, and it's definitely different for outfielders if you're getting like a sinking line drive. But I honestly don't think that it's going to be that bad because now more and more teams, especially in the travel circuit, are playing on turf fields. So even if you're not playing on too many high school turf fields like Eastern or Bordentown and a handful others up in North and Central Jersey or even down the shore, it's become mostly accustomed to the player base at this point to where it can be acceptable for something like a sanctioned state championship to be on a turf field.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to make that much of a big deal. You said when they're playing travel ball, you go down to Florida, you go to East Cobb, Georgia, you're playing on turf. And I think these kids are used to it. So play at Rutgers. I mean, like Veterans Park, that was a dirt and had grass in the infield and regular grass in the outfield, but it's not going to make a big difference for them. They're used to it at this point.
Yeah, I definitely think they're used to it as well. And while I enjoyed Veterans Park, I got a chance to go up there when I was younger. I would go with my grandfather and we'd ride bikes through the park. But it's a beautiful park, don't get me wrong. And it's perfect to be right in the middle of New Jersey. You're right, very accommodating to the south, you're very accommodating to the north. But yeah, I think that after Bosco CBA last year, that definitely threw more or less a nail in the coffin to the venue being used. And also, I think that it just makes more sense to use a Division One baseball field that can hold more people, that has larger capacity. And honestly, Rutgers, being a school with very good name recognition, may bring more people out. And what's more important, will bring more media presence out. Because what baseball needs in Jersey is a media presence. We need more people to come out and film games. I see every Instagram account that's a photographer that comes out to these basketball games do the same for baseball. I think that they really should appreciate that sport more. And I understand that the spring, it's a little bit of a different time, but for the 1 bajillion Instagram photographers out there, especially in South Jersey, they should put more stock into baseball. And I feel like giving way to a site that is pretty much, it's more legitimate. Let's just say that it's more of a legitimate site for playoff games where it doesn't feel like you're at a high school field. When we did our handful of baseball games at the Trenton Thunder ballpark, I barely felt like I was watching a high school game,
Yep.
because of that atmosphere, because of what can be brought to the table. And Rutgers does that very well with their presentation and their brand recognition. So I am very excited for this move.
Same with me. I'm excited, and again, like I said, I think it's a good move. And Veterans Park, like you said, it's a nice place. It doesn't have much space though in the bleacher sides, and you kind of stack those people. That's how they got their noise and for it to be loud because everybody was packed so close together. But Rutgers, I think you're going to get more media attention to this. I mean, like New Jersey wrestling is at Boardwalk Hall. They get a lot, and many people that argue there is that they draw more attendance than the MAC basketball championships that are hosted there the week prior. So if we can get more eyes on New Jersey baseball, that's improving year after year. It's only going to be better for the kids, for the teams, and for the schools.
And I would say as well, first of all, just to clarify, it's MAAC.
Yeah.
Because I got tripped up on it before we started recording. I was like, MAC? I was like, what do you mean, Miami, Ohio? No, but what I think is also interesting, and I didn't put this in the notes, but I want to mention it, Middlesex Park is set to open in a few years. I don't know if you're aware of that. It is so I have it up on the screen now. It is a $40 million stadium that is going to be built in Edison, right off the site of Middlesex College, and I'll pull up another photo here. But it is a development that is set to open, and apparently it's going to host a handful of Rutgers baseball games in 2027 or 2028. You can see there's a little bit of like a concourse going around. It's a little bit more professional, almost like a minor league park. Now, those are just concept photos, and I don't know if construction has began yet, but what I do know is that it's another option for the NJSIAA if by the off chance Rutgers makes a regional or super regional. Whether that happens in the next few years, I don't know. But you never know. College baseball is full of upset stories. And my only concern would be that if Rutgers makes a big run in 2026 or even in any of the years that they host at Bainton, it would run directly into the NJSIAA baseball state championships. Like the thing is about when you host the football state championships, that the Giants and the Jets are not going to play on a Wednesday night at MetLife. But what you do know is you can work around that because you're in the regular season.
Yep.
You can modify the dates to when Rutgers is going to be at home or is going to be away from home or when the Giants or Jets are going to be away from home. You can't really do that with playoffs because you don't know what a team is going to do yet. You kind of have to hope for the best and see what happens. But I think Middlesex Park is going to be a fun option. And honestly, what I would say is that not only could it be an option for state championships, I am one that is fully on board with having state semifinals at neutral sites, excuse me. I don't know how you feel about that, but what I think is that for a state semifinal, I think it's it's almost like an NFC championship game or an AFC championship game. Yes, you want that atmosphere there, but I think that high school fields do not have the proper resources to host a game with that amount of magnitude, and that's why I think they do it right for basketball. I feel like they should do the same for baseball.
I agree with you. A lot of coaches that I've talked to, they want the state semifinals to be a neutral site. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they were previous. They were played at like TCNJ or something like that.
I don't know for
Like
sure. My memory doesn't go back that far.
I'm pretty sure like '07 ish they were played at neutral sites. But yeah, I mean like you want that atmosphere, but you want a good venue for that as well. You want a good, well taken care of field. And some of these high school fields we know they're not the greatest shape.
Yeah, I think something like if they built a parking lot, Rutgers Camden would be a fantastic state semi experience. It is consistently listed as one of the most beautiful fields, not only in the state but in the entire country, for its view of the Ben Franklin Bridge and whatnot. But you and I know from every time we've done a game at Rutgers Camden, parking is an issue. You got to park in a lot that's 3 blocks away. You have to hope that you don't get ticketed if you park on the street. And if you do park on the street, you're almost all the way at the aquarium at that point. So you really need better infrastructure for parking at the stadium if you were going to do that. And I feel like it's one of those things where basketball you can just set up anywhere. Like Deptford and Monroe Township, not our Monroe Township, the
Yeah.
Central Jersey Monroe. They host basketball state semis. And I remember, those are two of the biggest arenas in New Jersey for high school events. And that aren't college venues because they're
Yep.
obviously larger, but Deptford has massive bleachers. Monroe has massive bleachers. But for baseball, what do you have? You really only have college venues. Eastern is one of the few venues I can think of that has permanent bleachers that go all the way around, like college style. I wouldn't mind something like a JUCO field being used for that. Not to toot my own horn, but RCSJ Gloucester has some great permanent seating. It's not great in the sense of the immense quality, but it's there. You're not setting up all the chairs along the lines. You have probably about 500, 600 people that could fit in the 3 partitions of the bleachers from each side. So I think that when it comes to state semis, I think we're still a little bit away from getting that because you
Yep.
do have to get, kind of multi-year contracts with these venues. And, something like Middlesex Park would be a good option for that. Like I said, down south, I think some good options would be something like Rutgers Camden if they built a parking lot for it, just some kind of substantial parking or transportation to get people in and out of the venue. Something like TCNJ would work. Along the lines, I'm also thinking up north, you could use Woodridge, the Woodridge Athletic Complex, which hosted the state finals when Veterans Park had too poor field conditions last year to host. So I think that there's still a lot of work to be done in that regard, but hopefully by 2028 or 2029, maybe we get state finals at excuse me, state semifinals at neutral site games. But to close out on that point, Rutgers, I like the fact that they're making the push for state finals, and as we go deeper into the season, we're not going to say, "Oh, the push for Veterans Park is on." It's the push for Rutgers.
Yeah.
It's the push for Piscataway, if you will, and I think that's going to be really fun.
Agreed, and like I said, it's gonna bring media more there and things like that. I mean, like everybody, I don't, to my knowledge, people liked Veterans Park because it was in the middle, like you said. But Rutgers is going to be the better venue, and hopefully it continues for years on. And if Rutgers didn't make a regional or super regional, hopefully they can work around that with Rutgers and find common ground.
Yeah, that's the thing is that listen, this isn't a perfect solution, but it's better than what it was, and we don't have to deal with any curfew nonsense or
Yeah.
whatever. You know, I understand that there were a lot of external factors that went into that, but the fact that a curfew shut down a baseball game in the middle of the game was entirely inexcusable, and I think was the final nail in the coffin for Veterans Park being a state final venue. I think, honestly, if you want my opinion, keep Veterans Park as a state semifinal. If you want to put state semis at neutral sites, make Veterans Park a state semi. Use that as your south and central state semis, and then the north can be at either Woodridge or Diamond Nation and
Yeah.
Flemington. A lot of great venues up north that could really use the exposure. Obviously, Diamond Nation, they don't need help or anything, but it's just like, there's a lot of venues that really could shine from having something as prestigious as a state semifinal there. So let's move on. We do have some positive news in the development of Frank Chiron. As far as a lot of you were concerned, or as far as we reported on in early January, he was hospitalized in a car accident on January 2nd. For something that happened in his hometown of Franklinville. We didn't receive any public information, or information at least that we could share on his condition, but what we do know is that Baseball Performance Center posted a video just today of him throwing with some kind of training ball during a session at BPC. Now, this is a training facility that's very well known in Atlantic County, and they showed him with the caption, "He is back," and a prayer emoji. So he seems to be back on the path to getting at least enough rehabilitation to get back to throwing again. Obviously, it is still it's still going to be a very long process. If you want my opinion, I don't think he's going to play in 2026, but I think that for the Brewers prospect and for the youngster, he'll at least be in the right direction in terms of his recovery, and this is obviously a fantastic sign.
Yeah, this is fantastic news, especially for us South Jersey people. We've covered him, like we mentioned last episode, and he's just a really good overall pitcher. He's a good kid. So my thoughts and prayers still with his family, and hopefully this is a step in the right direction. It should be, and like you said, 2026 he might not play, but he'll come back ready to go and back and better than ever.
Yeah, obviously the hype around Chiron as a prospect is unreal, and excuse me, as a second round draft pick out of Delsey, a lot to like about the kid, not just as a player, but as a person as well. So really happy to see this progress from Frank, and hopefully he's able to make a full recovery and get back to not only being, able to physically move fully again, but back to playing baseball again. Still just some fantastic news. So there's your clip from BPC, and we do have some news in the baseball to softball pipeline, as former Haddon Township coach Doug Richardson, it was announced this morning in the Courier Post, written by Tom McGurk, that he will be taking over the position as the Bishop Eustace Prep softball coach. Now, we are a baseball podcast, but we still show some love to the women's side sometimes. And, Doug Richardson, he coached 10 years as an assistant 10 years as a head coach, 15 years total with Haddon Township. He was a assistant for Dave Dale when Haddon Township won the South Jersey Group 2 title in 2009. And he's going to be taking over a rebuilding, Bishop Eustace softball program that has only won a handful of games since they restarted the program in 2022. They went 0-10 in 2022. They went 1-9 in 2023, 1-10 in 2024, and then 4-13. And those numbers sound low. It's mostly because, honestly, when they came back, they had closed their program in 2020 before
Yep.
COVID hit, and then they kept it closed for 2021. So they came back, and they really exclusively played Olympic Conference games. They would only play one or two non-conference games in a year, like versus a Camden Charter or a Highland, something like that. So that's where some of those lone wins came from. But they picked up 4 wins last year. They made it to the South Jersey non-public B playoffs, which they won a game over Timothy Christian. They've only been really playing, though, Olympic Conference games. And while a baseball to softball coach is a little bit rare, it's still an interesting development, still an interesting story. And Nick Delgazzo will have an open slot on his assistant coaching staff.
Yeah, we'll see where this goes. I think it's a good hire. Doug Richardson, he's been around a while. He had success at Haddon Township. And he's going to have a little bit of time to get his feet wet with Bishop Eustace because, again, like you said, they're rebuilding. So You win. They won 0-1-1-4. You win
That's
5 games next year. That's an improvement. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And you hire a local guy. I mean, like Haddon Township's not too far from Bishop Eustace. So we'll see how it goes for Richardson. And he's
And
at,
his daughter and son are at Bishop Eustace. His son Noah is on the baseball team, and his daughter is on the softball team as well. So a very familiar connection for Doug Richardson, and we wish him the best over Bishop Eustace. Although we
surely.
will miss him in the dugout with Nick Delgado. A little bit of an interesting news out of LaSalle. We're going to see the Explorers playing the University of Maryland Eastern Shore team at home next weekend. They were originally supposed to have their first home game versus the University of Delaware on February 24th, but that has now been that game has not changed, but this game that was originally supposed to be at UMass's home field in Princess Anne, Maryland has now been moved to the home field for LaSalle in Philadelphia at Hank DeVincent Field. It'll be LaSalle's first home baseball game since May 9th, 2021. We talked about at length their program in our college baseball preview
Yep.
episode last time, and now we get to talk a little bit more about them. But LaSalle keeping their old head coach from last time and playing a UMES team that has historically had little success of any kind in the Division One realm. They won the regular season title in 1995 in the MEAC, but they lost to Bethune-Cookman in the final in 1995. But even then, that was 30 years ago. They have not had an over 500 record in any of the prep that I could find dating back to 2002. And you might remember in the 2023 season. In the 2024 season, they had that historic 0-48 season.
Yeah.
That's nothing that anybody wants to have. And LaSalle will kick off their non-conference schedule with an interesting D1 matchup because, yes, UMES is not historically very good, but LaSalle hasn't played in 5 years. We have zero clue how they're going to play.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the main reasons LaSalle scheduled this game against a lower level Division One team to try to get their feet back. But LaSalle, it's an early start, February 13th. I mean, like I saw last weekend, I think it was a D2 team. They were playing in like the snow.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, there was a team in South Carolina, Carson Newman. That's what it was.
yeah,
They were playing in the snow because D2, D3, and NAIA can start way earlier than Division One can.
yeah. So we'll see how it goes for LaSalle, but move it up a little bit, and you see what you can do in that first weekend. And hopefully LaSalle has a good year. They have a lot of South Jersey talent that I'm looking forward to see how they make the jump from high school to Division One baseball.
And when you have South Jersey talent, we automatically want you to
Yeah,
succeed. So they play a lot of really good non-conference teams in their opening slate. They play Delaware in late February. I'm going to want to go to that game. Clemson is going to be fun. That's going to be their first taste of a Power Five program. They play them. I can't remember what date specifically, but I do have the schedule up. It is March 6th through 8th. They're actually going to play 4 games there at Clemson. They're going to play a standard game on Friday and then a doubleheader on Saturday the 7th and then on the 8th. And then they go to Villanova on the 10th as well, just before they start Atlantic 10 play versus Virginia Commonwealth. So I think LaSalle, listen, I think that they are certainly in for a battle-tested season. And listen, they're only playing one Power Five team on their schedule, which is Clemson, but they're still playing Penn, they're still playing St. Peter's, UMBC, which follows us on Twitter, by the way, Iona, and a few others in non-conference play, and UMES being one of them. So even though this may not be a very enticing matchup to the average fan, I think that LaSalle's first baseball game in 5 years is going to give a lot of pride to this college. It's going to give a lot of pride to its alumni and the people who have played on this team, coming back after being dormant. Listen, we were kind of talking about it briefly before the show started, but there are a handful of Power Five teams that don't have baseball. You know, not Power Five, but in the Philadelphia region, Temple doesn't have one,
yep.
Drexel doesn't have one. But when you do talk about Power Fives in the Big 12, Colorado and Iowa State don't have one, and then in the Big 10, Wisconsin doesn't have one. And I believe in the ACC, Syracuse has never had a baseball team. If they did, it was back in like the 70s or the 80s. But Syracuse, funny enough, the first school that I really wanted to go to when I wanted to get into sports broadcasting was Syracuse. but I didn't go. I didn't even apply because they didn't have a baseball team. And you and and listen, as much as that sounds crazy to say, so much of my broadcasting style is embedded in baseball that also it's also like a 30 below zero there, so
Yeah.
if they did play baseball, I think like 80% of their games will be on the road,
Yeah,
but
well, they play football in a dome, so.
and basketball. Well,
Yeah.
okay. You know what? I kind of did myself in with that one. Although basketball has been played outside before.
Yeah, it's been played on like that cruise ship or whatever.
The well,
Not cruise ship.
Navy
Yeah.
carrier. All right, we both messed up there. Yeah, yeah. Nothing like a
It's
cruise on
it's
a Navy
it's
carrier.
been a long week.
And what I'll say as well is that what I meant to say is that the basketball team plays in the same dome
Yeah.
that at least I think they do still play.
Yeah, definitely what you meant though. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's definitely yeah. All right. Oh, basketball. You ever heard of it? It's played indoors. I've never heard of that before. No, but what's interesting to me is that we one of the things that isn't really South Jersey, but got put up in the news this week is that since joining the Big Ten in 2014, Rutgers has faced a financial loss of like $500 million. They're in a huge debt, and they really are in a lot of financial trouble. They have a new athletic director, and she seems to have her ducks in a row when it comes to like getting this straightened out. But when it comes to being in the Big Ten, you get one of the biggest media rights shares of all conferences in the country for
Yep.
the NCAA. I keep wanting to talk about JUCO. I keep wanting to say NJCAA, but in the NCAA, I think it's the Big Ten, and then above them is the SEC. I think that they're number two when it comes to what you get in terms of media rights or media payment as a school. And these TV deals, where is all that money going?
Yeah.
And my biggest concern as a baseball fan is that when you look at the history of baseball in the U.S. and college baseball in the U.S., one of the first sports that gets cut in an NCAA school that's having immense financial trouble is baseball and softball. A lot of schools don't have baseball in Division One, and a lot of schools don't have softball as well. So I think that while Rutgers baseball probably isn't in
Yeah.
dire straits right now, I think that honestly, 5-10 years down the road, we really don't know because while they're hosting the NJSIAA state finals this year, we really don't know what Rutgers has in store, and it really concerns me that they're in this much financial debt as a school that is a public university of New Jersey and is having one of the worst athletic financial statements of all schools in the Power Five and beyond. But maybe that's just me. I don't know if you had any opinions on that.
No, yeah. My question is, where did all the money go to? Like,
Yeah,
how are
like
you with that many students, with the media stuff? Where did it all go?
yeah,
It doesn't add up in my opinion. But I saw a thing last night, and this is basketball related. Mick Cronin, UCLA coach, he said like, this is the MLB. We don't have a salary cap, and that's one of the problems in college, that there's too much money going around, especially in football and basketball.
yeah. I could do an entire 2-hour episode about how I feel about NIL and everything like that. But I think just to make it short, I don't think that like there has to be a balance. John Calipari said it best. I think that people are not transferring because of the coaches these days. They're mostly transferring because of the money. They're chasing the money. And while I do think that college baseball is still sticking at least somewhat pure, they're probably next in terms of who is going to get, NIL-ified, if you will. I know that's not a word, but you get what I'm saying,
Yeah.
is that they are going to be next in terms of who is going to get really just hit with the short end of the stick on NIL. And it's going to start with the Power Fives, and then it's going to trickle down to the mid majors, and then it's going to trickle down to Division Twos, Division Threes, and JUCOs. And listen, I am not against players being paid because I think that they put in an unbelievable amount of time to prepare. Being a Division One college athlete is a year-round job, and they shouldn't get nothing. But like there has to be a middle ground. Like it's popular to say that we should go back to the old ways, or we should pay these players more. There's extremes on both sides, but the boring and really what I think is the most logical take is we can't go back to all the way back when, like, wasn't it Reggie Bush from USC that got suspended for like accepting lunches or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Like accepting an extremely small amount of money
Well,
from
that
a
was the
coach at
same
USC.
thing this past off season in basketball with Wofford. Like their coach bought the guy's lunch and he got like fired and that blew up. But just going back on your point, I don't have a problem with the players making money. They deserve it. They put in the time and effort to go play and continue their athletic careers. But my problem is that it's not free agency.
No,
You just can't stay there. If you
yeah,
want to go make more money, then go to the pros. Like,
exactly. Because in the NBA, you are allowed to leave college after 1 year.
yeah,
Thanks to the Spencer Haywood rule, which, listen, if you want my opinion on that, I don't think that I think you should play at least 2 years in college before you can go to the NBA or any kind of professional sport. But that seems to be a bit unpopular because, listen, I think that the old fashioned take, no offense to our older crowd, but the boomer take is it is, oh well, these players are getting a free education, so why should they get paid? Well, think about it in the sense of like an internship. Yeah, you're getting a free education, you're getting free room and board, but that doesn't mean that your life is free.
yeah.
That doesn't mean that you have zero expenses. Like I go to a community college. Is it as expensive as a 4-year school or as expensive as being an athlete at a school? No. It is not as expensive as that. But I still have expenses. I still have to pay for things. So, yeah, getting zero money I don't think is the solution, but the way that John Calipari said it, and I think that Dabo Swinney in football kind of backed it up across sports, is you should be able to get one transfer without penalty. And that would be if your coach lies to you, if your coach says you're going to get playing time, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and then they don't, or if the coach leaves, or if the coach gets fired, and that should be your one penalty-free transfer. But if you transfer after that, then you should have to sit. Now, not saying that you should be disqualified from
Yeah.
transferring, but you should have to sit. And you get your normal medical red shirt. You get your normal injury year, whatever it may have you. But we're in a world where there was a tight end from Miami. I can't remember his name, but he was
Yep.
playing like his 8th college football season. There are a handful of players. There's a player right now, I believe he's on Illinois. Can't remember, it was some school in the Big 12 that was born in the year 2000. There are a whole bunch of NBA players that were born in '04, '03, '05. Cooper Flagg was born in 2005. He's around the same age that we are, except he's not hosting a South Jersey baseball podcast. He's doing marginally better things. But um, listen, I think that college sports as it is are broken, and that's part of why we cover baseball. Because baseball seems to be one of the few sports that still has the pureness, the history, and the legacies still there.
Yeah,
You know,
knock on
it
wood.
hasn't. Knock on wood, it hasn't been buried yet, and I'm worried that it's on that path.
Agreed, and I hope it doesn't go down that path, or at least if it does go down that path, maybe we have more figured out, and there's some of those limitations that you're mentioning to it. But that's why we cover baseball, like you said, because we don't have to deal with the NIL and all the money going places we don't know where it's going.
And there's still money. Don't get me wrong. There's
Yeah,
still money. I
yeah,
still see players posting NIL stuff from D1 baseball stuff,
but
but
there's not as much.
it's not as much.
Yeah,
It's like like healthy food, and it's this, it's that. It's not like major brands
yeah.
getting involved. Not yet, at least. So we do have our main topic that we were going to mention at the beginning. We talked about the BCSL. We're going to go through each conference in our endeavors for the first, for the next couple of weeks. We're going to talk about the different conferences, the 5 South Jersey conferences. We may devote a little bit of time to like maybe as a tangent to CVC and Shore because they're Central Jersey conferences, but they play a lot of South Jersey schools. So it really could go either way. But we are mainly going to focus on the five South Jersey conferences: the BCSL, the Cal, the Colonial, the Olympic, and the Tri County. And we're going to go one at a time. We're going to talk about the BCSL. So the first team I want to talk about is the Doan Spartans. They went 15-7 last year. They won the BCSL Freedom, went a perfect 7-0, and they were the underdog team in South Jersey last year. While they were successful 2 years ago, this was the first year under the Dan Williamson era in his third year that Doan really got to shine and was given proper full South Jersey exposure for the first time. And part of that was led to their balanced attack. They started off the season 10-0 before losing the Maple Shade for their first loss of the season, and they still went 15-7. They dropped off a little bit near the end, but all the opponents that they lost to were still very respectable opponents. I think the only team that they lost to that was, maybe a little bit beneath them was Newark Academy and Prep B. But Burlington Township, solid team. Eastern, solid team in the Diamond Classic. Bishop Eustace, they're the two big dogs. Here's my thing. We talked about it a little bit before we started. In South Jersey non-public B, for the last Lord knows how many years, has been a two-dog race. Gloucester Catholic and Bishop Eustace. Now, yes, Holy Cross won a state championship out of non-public B in 2016. But outside of a few exceptions, it has always been Eustace and GC. And there's even a video from 1983 on the GCN Archives channel of Eustace and GC playing in the parochial finals or whatever. Like, they're like the Yankees and the Dodgers in the World Series. They meet almost every single time. They've met the last 2 years at least, if not longer. And there aren't a lot of teams in South Jersey that have been able to punch up to that. And Doan felt like the first team in a while that really could be the next third guy at the table to compete with them.
Yeah, that's what we mentioned in previous to the show. Doan, they've had good seasons in the last 2 years, but can they get over that hump in non-public B because of those top dogs in Gloucester Catholic and Bishop Eustace? Now, they played Bishop Eustace last year in the semifinal in non-public B, 9-3 loss. It's probably closer than many people thought it would be, but the Powell twins, Jacob and Chris, they've been the guys, and they're seniors this year. So many people this might be their last chance. But Jacob last year 2.80 ERA on the mound. His brother Chris only 10 and 2/3 innings. He had a 1.31 ERA. But they do it at the plate. They got speed. They pitch well. So Doan, they got high hopes this year. I think they'll be good in the BCSL again. But the biggest question mark is, can you knock off one of those top dogs, Eustace or Gloucester Catholic?
Yeah, can you punch up? That's basically the question. I mean, listen, when they were with Carmine Caesar in 2022, they went 3-12. In 2021, they went 6-9. They weren't even in a conference. Their first season in the BCSL was 2022. So really, when you're an independent, you don't really get taken seriously because who are you playing? You're playing like Life Center and King's Christian and stuff like that. And listen, and you're playing out of state schools. But now that out of state competition doesn't really matter as much, you're now seeing these teams play a more lucrative schedule. And that's why I say, if you're not in a conference, I'm not going to take you all that seriously. Unless you have a reason for me to take you seriously, you got to be in a conference. Send that to Notre Dame. But no, but when we look at what Doan is capable of, when we know that they are possible to really shine in terms of their pitching and their batting, they're also really good on the bases. They stole 149 bases last year. That was second in South Jersey. The leading team that stole bases better than them was Pleasantville at 157. But when you look at the stats that I think really should matter, in like batting average, the best team in South Jersey for batting average was Northern Burlington. They hit 398 as a team last year, and we'll get into that next because they are next. But Doan was 12th in South Jersey. They hit 328. There were only 21 teams in South Jersey that had a 300-plus batting average last year. And Doan was right in the middle of the pack out of them. They walked a lot. They stole a lot of bases. There weren't a lot of teams that picked up that many walks, but they were one of them. They were right up there. They were also top 15 in that regard as well. So while they don't look like the most flashy team at the plate, they walk, they hit for singles and doubles, and they steal a lot of bases. Their slugging percentage was 468, not all that high, but their batting average was 328 and their ERA was 277, which was also quite low. That's tied for 16th in all of South Jersey. They were tied with Absegami and Shawnee last year at 2.77. So, honestly, do I think that Doan is going to be a team that is going to shock the world? I don't know, because the teams that they do play in the Freedom are a little bit suboptimal,
Yep.
but I mean, that's the whole freedom and the independence. 90% of what we're going to talk about today is going to be the the upper two divisions in the Liberty, which has Northern Burlington and Cinnaminson, Delran, Burlington Township, and then we're going to talk about the team with Bordentown and Pennsauken, the Patriot. There we go. I couldn't think of it. But Bordentown, Florence, Maple Shade, Pennsauken, those guys, those two divisions are really the best divisions in the BCSL. I would honestly not mind seeing Doan move to one of those divisions. Like,
Yeah.
put Doan in the Patriot, put maybe Holy Cross or Pennsauken in the Freedom, let them rebuild for a little while. Not that Holy Cross or Pennsauken are, like, bad teams. They're just, listen, Pennsauken had a down year.
Yeah.
I think that Kelvin Batista is going to do great. I think that he really, really is a fantastic hitter. And then Holy Cross, they lost a few transfers. I think that Zach Ford's a good coach. They definitely started off slower than they wanted to, but they won a playoff game, and that's better than a lot of teams can say. And the wins that they did have, some of them were decently impressive. And what I would also say is that versus the teams that they lost, they were decently competitive in that regard as well. And that's what I would also say about Pennsauken. They were 2-14, but they held up a fight versus a lot of the best teams. Like, I'm looking at the schedule right now that they had last year. They were 2-14, played 16 games, missed the playoffs, and in their 14 losses, they only gave up 10 or more runs 3 times. And they held close at a lot of them. 4-0 to Cinnaminson, 1-0 to Maple Shade, 4-3 to Delran, 1-0 to Bordentown, 6-5 to Florence, 16-10 versus Glassboro, 9-6 to Holy Cross, and then 9-0 versus Northern Burlington, 7-4 versus Morristown, 5-0 versus Seneca. I sound like a broken record, but the way that it is that their pitching held them down. Pennsauken did a good job in that regard, but the offense definitely struggled. And I think that if Pennsauken's going to get back to where they were a few years ago, because they have been successful. They were pretty good as recently as 2023. So, Rolando Gartier, he's a good coach. Also, former coach of Pennsauken, Setchwayo Bird. He's over at West Hampton Tech for basketball, but that was their last over 500 season, was in 2019 when Bird was at the helm of the program, and they were winning some good games. So I don't think that Pennsauken's that far off, but now we're going to pivot to who we were talking to before, or who we were talking about before, which is Northern Burlington. I honestly don't think that there is that much to say about Northern Burlington just because they are that good.
Yeah, like I mentioned previous to the show, they lost some seniors, but their roster's so deep that okay, we lost them, we're going to bounce right back. And when we talked about predictions, we did our like South Jersey sectional way too early things. Northern Burlington was both in our Group 3, and we said that they can win back-to-back state titles, mainly in part due to Cole Marchetti. He hits and a 1.63 ERA last year on the mound. And Northern Burlington 28-2, and the only 2 losses were to a talented mainland team in the Diamond Classic and Gloucester Catholic. That was like a late a Saturday morning game, I think it was.
And it was post cutoff.
Yeah.
Didn't even count.
But they are well coached, well-rounded lineup. They got power, they got speed, and their pitching staff. Even though Luca Manino's gone, we'll see how they do. Logan Downey still, who pretty sure he's committed to Villanova. Northern Burlington, they're going to be good. They're going to be the top dogs in the BCSL once again, I think, and hopefully they challenge themselves in the non-conference with Gloucester Catholic maybe again, and we'll see who they match up in the Diamond Classic with.
Well, here's the thing about Northern Burlington is that I think after a couple of years of them being good but not great, this 28-2 season brings them back to the norm. The last time that Northern Burlington was under 500 was 2012, and of course when Rick Doppler, the legendary Rick Doppler, retired in 2021, the guy that took over was Gene Darling. In their first season, they went 17-9. They made it to the second round of the Central Group 4 tournament. 2023, excuse me, they went 11-14 in 2023. So before that, the last time was 2012. But still, last year before in 2024 they went 14-10-1 and they made the second round of the playoffs. But then not that long before that, in 2019, they made it to the Group 3 finals in the Central Group 3 finals. They beat Pennsauken, Ocean Township and Liberty all on the road and lost to Wall Township 10-2. And then, they win 13 games in 2018, 12 in 2017. But then they had a season in 2014 where they went 20-7 and then kind of tapered off towards the end and lost in the second round. 2015, they go 27-5. They win the Group 3 sectional championship over Somerville, and then they make it to the state finals before losing to South Plainfield. This state championship was a long time coming from Northern Burlington, and it's nothing new for them. This is just a reinstatement and a reinforcement of the standards up in Mansfield Township. And that's what I think that a lot of people forget about Northern Burlington, is that not only have they been good this year, they have been good for a long time. We just forgot about them because they tapered off ever so slightly for 2 or 3 years. And you were talking about a lot of their pitching, what they were able to do. Cole Marchetti, he's going to be their number one guy this year. I think I'm very excited for Logan Downey, the sub-1 ERA. Marchetti, obviously the commit to Rutgers. Don't forget about Jaden Freese as well. Had a sub-4 ERA as a freshman in 11 innings. It doesn't seem like that much of a sample size, but you really do have to evaluate freshmen a little bit differently, especially on a 28-2 team. Listen, if he's getting 12 innings worth of playing time as a freshman, that means he's good enough to be on the varsity team, and I think that that's something that shouldn't be ignored. But listen, Jimmy Musser was a great pitcher last year for them. Luca Menino was a great pitcher, and I'm going to just circle back to what you were saying, that Northern Burlington I don't think will be affected by these senior losses. I think that Liam Vellet is still probably a top 3, if not number 1 or number 2 catcher in South Jersey. Listen, Braden Lipoff is up there for the class of 2026. Yep. I think that right now it's a race between Vellet and Lipoff, and we'll get into those positional evaluations more as we get deeper into the season. But Vellet's right up there with Lipoff, and he's Vellet's committed to Fordham, which is a solid team up in that region in the Northeast, and then Braden Lipoff's committed to East Carolina. So there's really a lot. And then not to talk about Jaden Freese as well. Not only that, I just noticed on here, I didn't even see it, that he had a over 300 batting average in 70 at-bats. So, yeah, Jaden Freese, very good freshman. Yep. Liam Vellet, very good rising senior. These guys are great. They are deep. They have a lot of players that can really shine at every position. And Gene Darling is a great head coach. He's one of those head coaches that if you just passed by him on the street, you wouldn't think that he was you would just think he's any old guy. But Gene Darling, he is setting up a legacy where Coach Doppler left off in Northern Burlington.
Yeah, like you said, Northern Burlington, we have to remember that they were good because of that fall off for a couple of years there. But they're going to continue to be good because, like I said, that roster's so deep. They compete in Central Jersey. That is Central Jersey to me up there. There's a couple of disagreements like with Delran and Cinnamons and stuff like that. But Northern Burlington, they're going to be good for years to come, and I'm really excited, again, what they can do this year because of how deep that roster is.
And then the next team we get the pleasure of talking about, the Burlington Township Falcons under Steve Hovart. Went 13-10 last year. They were 6-6 at home, 7-4 away. And they went 3-3 in conference play. Listen, when you're facing Northern Burlington, we're not even talking about divisional championships because you're trying to get the best individual performances that you can. But I think that they played decently well for what it's worth. They lost in the first round of the Diamond. They held their own in both games that they had to play versus NBC, and they beat some good competition. They beat Delran twice. They beat Shawnee 1-0. They played Cherokee, which they lost that game, but it was still a competitive game. And then they made it to the second round of the Central Group 3 bracket where they beat West Tech, lost in the second round to Middletown South as a 3 seed. But for Burlington Township, I think one of the big things for them and Cinnaminson, they're really revamping their pitching staff this year. Not that that is necessarily a bad thing, but their big 3, Robbie Bettler, Chad Brewer, and Sean Heffernan, all seniors, all gone. Sean Heffernan had one of the best individual performances I had seen in a long time out of any player. 5.59 average, 8.09 slugging percentage, and a grand total of 14 extra base hits. And then on the mound, he pitched 45 innings, 60 Ks, 3.09 ERA. There's not a lot of players that can get better than that. But I don't see any player except for Ryan Robles, who had 16 innings as a sophomore. As a rising junior, it's very difficult to have your pitching staff stripped away from you, and then you have to rebuild that all over. Their offense is good, don't get me wrong, but I think that their pitching staff is going to be an issue for Burlington Township.
Agreed. Maybe they have somebody on the JV level or a freshman that's now a sophomore or an incoming freshman that maybe could step up in that spot. But like you said, Ryan Robles, he's really the only guy that catches our eye that is going to maybe try to fill those shoes right now. But even though he only pitched 16 and 2/3, yes, he's a sophomore, but you have to see who he pitched against. And just give me a minute here.
I'll take a look at it, yeah.
Maple Shade, Shawnee, Cherokee, and Kingsway. Those are some good teams, but
that Maple Shade game was weird. I didn't get to go to it, but I looked at it extensively in my prep for when we did that Maple Shade Holy Cross game. They won that game 22-10, and if you look at the box score, they had a 19-run sixth inning. So Burlington Township in this one game scores 2 runs in the second inning, 1 in the fourth, and then 19 runs in. I just pulled it up on the screen now. There's the box score. 2 runs in the second, 1 in the fourth, and then a 19-run sixth inning. I had never seen anything like that before, but yeah, that was an interesting game to say the least. But going back to what we were saying, yeah, the pitching staff is going to definitely take a hit, and Kelly Walsh didn't do too bad, had 8 innings scoreless, but he only pitched in 3 games. He had Northern Burlington, where he pitched 1, Holy Cross Prep, where he pitched 5, and then West Tech, where he pitched 2. Those 2 games were Mercy Rule wins. So looking at the offense, though, 294 average, 365 slugging percentage. Really, the name that sticks out to my eye that's not a senior is probably Michael Lingrell. Hit 328 with a homer and 4 doubles, 448 slugging. Had a couple of really good performances. Kind of tapered off at the end of the year. Was hitless in 4 of his last 5 games, but had some really good performances. And I think, honestly, if you look at what Burlington Township is capable of, again, they're a team that is going to have to lean on their offense this year. Last year they were, 13-7. They've been hanging around that mark for a little while. They won 16 games in 2023. They only won 9 in 2022, and then they won 9 again in 2021. So, what would be, where is Burlington Township right now? They've won 13 games the last 2 years, 16 in 2023, and then 9 in 21 and 22. So what's an improvement? 15 wins, 16 wins?
Yeah.
I don't know, but with how the rest of this division is shaping up, that seems like that's going to be a pretty tall task.
Yeah, and like you said, I don't think offense is their problem. I think they can fill those shoes. They're going to have to rely, like you said, on it. But pitching is the biggest concern, and they have a really tough divisional schedule with Delran, Northern Burlington, and Cinnaminson in there. And we'll get to Cinnaminson and Delran in a little bit. But I'm looking at Burlington Township's schedule that is available on the BCSL website. Haddon Heights non-conference they're playing. That's a tough one.
That should be pretty good.
Yeah. Cherokee they're playing. Cherokee we
playing
know.
them again, yeah.
Yeah. Bordentown they're playing. That's not non-conference, but they're playing like those CBC teams like Robbinsville and stuff like that, Heightstown. But Burlington Township. Sorry.
It's too many Burlingtons.
Yeah. They're pitching. They got to figure that out, and I think if they do, they can maybe get those 15, 16 wins like you were talking about.
Yeah, if they get the pitching figured out, then they are going to be on the way to a great season, but the pitching is the one thing that I'm concerned about. Let's talk about Cinnaminson, the Cinnaminson Pirates. They are under their second-year head coach, Alex Injayan, the former assistant from Cherry Hill West, and in their first season, they didn't do half bad. 14-11, started out but with a 11-4 record in the month of April, but then really tapered off in May. Lost to Clearview in the first round of the Diamond, but then lost to Florence, lost to Overbrook, got mercy ruled by Lenape. They definitely had a weak month of May, and they won a playoff game. They won versus Ocean as a 13 seed in Central Group 2, but then lost to Raritan 2-1. Listen, I will give Injayan props, and I will give the rest of the Cinnaminson team props for winning a playoff game as a 13 seed on the road. That's difficult for anybody to do, but this is another team that is going to have to rely on their pitching. They've got some very young talent that I think is going to be good. They have a handful of freshmen that I think are actually going to be good players to watch. Like Gavin Bobrek, he doesn't look too spectacular on the NJ.com side. He only hit 217, but I got to see him for several games last year, and he showed some great defensive chops as an outfielder. He really had a lot of blazing speed, was able to get to the ball quickly, and I thought that he was going to be a great successor to a guy like Dylan McAndrews, who graduated last year. But their outfield is almost certainly going to change, obviously with Dylan McAndrews and Jude Zarnowski graduating, but this is another team where you've got a big three that graduates along with their pitching. Anthony Alessandroni, Charlie Kind, and Dylan McAndrews. Not to mention Luke Rittler had a couple of innings last year. He's graduated as well. Now backing them up is going to be Anthony Melchior, who didn't do terribly. He had a 4.5 ERA in 27 innings. And then you have after that guys in small sample sizes, Rocco Randazzo, Daniel Tyanoff, and Ronan Segrest, who are all sophomores. So as it goes, it's a little too early to tell, but it's another team like Burlington Township where the pitching is going to take a hit. At least in this case, though, Cinnamonston has enough guys that have experience as underclassmen to where I can actually give them a little bit more of a positive outlook than I can for BT because, you look at Randazzo, he had a 2.56 ERA in 13 innings. Daniel Tyanoff had a 2.62 in just over 5. So that's better than nothing, though. We only had one guy we could really highlight for Burlington Township. We've got 3 we can highlight for Cinnaminson that maybe can blend in and fit into what Alessandroni, Kind, and McAndrews are leaving behind.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think they're in a little bit better spot than Burlington Township is. And Alex Indian, he's a good coach. So you had older big three guys that were older. Now you're shifting to a more young team. And he also lost Noah Harvey last year, 324 hitter.
To Richmond.
Yeah. They lost a decent amount, but Cinnaminson, I think they're well coached, and they have a little bit more pitching depth than BT, like we keep on saying. So if those guys can fill the shoes and they find some more offense, Noah Harvey really was their main offensive guy. But
and Gideon Crisp, too. He wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
Was a 250 hitter.
But they have, sorry, that's a senior. They have some guys, like you already mentioned, that maybe can fill those shoes, and we'll see how the Pirates do this season.
Yeah, Rittler, we talk about Luke Rittler. He only had a few innings on the hill, but had 60 at-bats as a senior, hit 250. The team was right around the middle of the road when it comes to hitting. They had a low ERA, though, 2.94, struck out 145 batters, but a 259 average and a 355 slugging percentage. I think that Cinnamonson's going to be in a lot of low-scoring games this year, just like they were last year. I'm looking at their schedule. Their 1-0 loss to Northern Burlington in the middle of March, that's one of the best games that Northern Burlington had in terms of putting up a good fight against an opponent. They played Delran, won that one 2-1. Burlington Township, 2-0 win. GCIT, a 1-0 win. We were there for that. A 1-0 loss to Notre Dame, and then a 2-1 loss in the quarterfinal to a number 4 seed Raritan. And again, Cinnaminson was a number 13 seed in Central 2. So for Cinnaminson, they're going to be, I think they're going to be at a lot of low-scoring games this year. They're certainly going to be a team that is going to have to rely on their pitching again. Their offense was right around middle of the road. If they can work on that, they've got a hitter-friendly ballpark at Cinnaminson with the temporary fence. It's an interesting field to play at. The grass is a little bit taller, as it is at Cinnaminson. They've got a decent program over there. Eric Teasdale was there for 4 years, and obviously they didn't do too much with that. But I have confidence that Alex Injayan can turn this around, and not even turn it around because they don't need to be turned around. They just need to go forward. That's the only thing. They seem to be doing good otherwise.
Agreed, yeah. And like you said, they just need to go forward. They don't need to turn everything around. Same with BT. But I think they can do it. And they just, like I keep on saying, they need those guys to fill the shoes that they lost. And that's the biggest thing that most of these teams are going to have to deal with. I mean, there was a really good senior class in South Jersey last year, and there's a good one this year too. But these teams have to figure their new players out, and players that have experience already, they're going to get more experience. So maybe that helps as well too.
Well, we'll move on and talk about the Delran Bears. Now, the Delran Bears under Jim Goodwin, they have had a over 500 season for every year since COVID. They were 18-6 in 21 and 22. They were 14-8 in 2023, 12-12 last year, and then 13-7 this year. They honestly had a really good start. They were 5-1 in mid-April. They were 7-3, tapered off a little bit, but they did not have the the home playoff welcoming that they wanted. They lost by 13 to Bordentown in an absolutely wild Central Group 2 bracket. I mean, I've really never seen a bracket this crazy before, and only for the sectional final to end up 1v2 with Governor Livingston and Robbinsville. I mean, we'll pull up that the bracket as it is in Central Group 2. So just looking at this again, I'll readjust it on my screen. So looking at this, Governor Livingston beats the number 16 seed by 1, and then you have a 9 over 8, a 13 over a 14 over a 3, and then an 11 over 6, and then even in the 2v15, that game was close. So the only game that wasn't close was a 4 versus 13. And not to dog on Delran or anything, they just had a bad game, but it is a hard thing to come back from when you have you have a home playoff game, you're doing really well, and then you lose by 13 to a 14 seed. It's a rough thing to have. It's a rough thing to happen. But what I like about Delran, they have very young pitching. They had a couple of solid seniors last year. Jeff Kennard, his batting average was a little bit low, but he was a great defensive first baseman for Delran last year. And then also they've got Jack Jordan coming back, the multi-sport athlete. He plays football, he plays basketball, he can do a little bit of everything. Andrew Rhyme as well, another basketball player who's a great rebounder on the floor, but a great hitter with a 340 batting average as a sophomore as well. Delran being a bit of a smaller school than Cinnaminson or Cinnaminson or Northern Burlington or even Burlington Township. Even though Cinnaminson and Delran are both Group 2s, I think Delran's a school that, like, when you pull up to that campus, you would think that you're at a Group 1. Like, they are probably, I don't know the full numbers, but I think they're, like, right on the edge of Group 1 and Group 2. But still, they hit a little bit low. Their ERA was a little bit higher than you want, of 4.02. But what I like about their staff is the young pitchers, Andrew Rhyme and George Willard. If Willard brings down his ERA and Rhyme stays with the course, I think that they're going to be pretty good to replace Matt Avery, who was their leading starter last year.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about this Delran team, but I just want to focus on last year for a second here. They beat Cherokee, right? Cherokee top.
Was that in a post cutoff game?
Yeah.
Okay. Still,
yeah.
I looked at the box score before we started that game. They played all their starters. It's not like Cherokee laid down in that game.
Yeah. So they beat Cherokee. You have a home playoff game, like you mentioned, and it just a gut wrenching loss. I don't want to speak for Delran, but I think that since that day, May 27th of 2025, they just want to get back on the field because that is a gut-wrenching loss. And they beat Bordentown just a few weeks before that. And that's a division rival that they have there in Bordentown. But again, I'm not too worried about this team. They have Trevor Barna. They have Jonathan Avery. They have a deep pitching staff still, even with the loss of Matt Avery. Jackson Hager, who pitched a lot last year. And their offense, I think they can find Andrew Rhyme, like you said, 340 hitter. He's back this season. David Reisman, a lot of multi-sport athletes here, and that's what you need in a Group 1, Group 2 school. But I'm not worried about this Delran team. I think they're well coached and they can figure it out this year, maybe in the BCSL Liberty.
I think they absolutely can. And again, I was talking about what this Liberty division can do. Just looking at their division overall, what they were able to accomplish. All 4 teams went over 500. NB 28-2, Burlington Township 13-10, Cinnaminson 14-11, and then Delran 13-7. We can't say the same about the Patriot. We can't say the same about any division in the BCSL besides the Liberty. That is the number 1 division in the BCSL, and I think it's going to continue to be the number 1 division in the league for next year. We'll shift gears a little bit, and we'll talk about another team that many would consider Central Jersey, the Bordentown Scotties. Obviously, they have some great coaching over there in Bordentown, and we mentioned it at length, one of the best facilities. Chris Glenn has been a part of this organization for a while. He's been head coaching now for 14 years, and Bordentown is another team that just had a great start and then just couldn't finish. I mean, they were 15-12. They were 10-4 going into the month of May, and then they had a bad losing streak where they lost 4 games in a row. But one of those games was the Cherokee, so I'm not going to entirely discount them for that. But they also had another pretty senior-heavy class. Nick Carlini at first base. Their pitching definitely took a hit with Tyler Roselle and Connor Calora. They also have Luke Guire, the shortstop, who at 469 in his senior year, he's going to Delaware. But another team that at the team statistic level did quite good. They were 10th in South Jersey in ERA. They had a 2.39 team ERA, and then also had a 285 batting average as well. And then not only that, had 31 doubles as well. Luke Wire had 12 of those. Connor Calora had 7. There were a lot of a lot of contributing factors to this Bordentown team that looked pretty good, and I'm curious how they're going to evolve in 2026 with such a heavy class.
Yeah, they lost a lot in the pitching, like you already said. But Andrew Forster, I think he's going to be their top guy. He's going to have to step up. He stepped up last year, 53 in the third innings, at 2.10 ERA. That's pretty solid, especially in the BCSL. Um, Offense wise, he hit 299. That's pretty solid. 77 at bats. They do have a lot of pitchers only, or at least last year they did. Tyler Rousseau, he didn't really play offense as much. But Bordentown, they're another team, 15 and 12 last season. But they're another team that I think they get. They don't have to revamp that much. They just have to move forward a little bit, and I think they can do that, especially behind Forrester. Like I keep mentioning, he's their top guy.
Well, we saw Forster on our opening week versus Maple Shade. He
Yep.
pitched 5 1/3, struck out 11 in that 3-2 win over Maple Shade with a walk off by Luke Wire. Now, NJ.com has it in as a walk off double. It wasn't. It was an E8. But listen, I'm not going to go on the tangent about how I feel about people incorrectly putting in box scores. That's nothing against Bordentown. That's just listen. It was a walk off E8. How it is though. Andrew Forster's a great pitcher. You know, he had a 1.16 ERA as a sophomore, and it actually went up in his junior year to a 2.10. So if he can keep it around that 1.5 to 2 mark, he's going to be great. I mean, he really is going to lead this team. And while they do still have some younger guys like Chris Basile in the infield is a good sophomore.
Yep.
Luke Harris should have an up year, and then Wyatt Steckley as well had his first career varsity hit as in that opening day game that we saw, and he now hit 257 as a sophomore. So I think this is a Bordentown team that is going to be good. I applaud them for playing tough teams. They played Steinert last year in non-conference play. They played Haddon Heights, which is only going to get better. When we talk about the Colonial Conference, I think I'm going to have some controversial takes there, but I feel really good about Haddon Heights. And then they also played Shawnee and Cherokee in the Diamond. They beat Shawnee in the first round of the Diamond. So they are not a team that should be ignored.
No.
And Bordentown is certainly a team that is going to be competitive in a division that I don't know where it's going to go. Like Florence wasn't too bad with Kyle Bally, but like just kind of go. We're not going to go too deep into Florence just because we don't have that much information on them. But they had a 2.338 ERA, which was also top 10 in South Jersey. They were ninth, only one step above Bordentown, but they only had a 247 batting average. So where do you go from there? And then you have Maple Shade, who's 13 and 10, Pennsauken, who's 2 and 14, and then Holy Cross, who's 7 and 16. You only have 3 out of 5 teams that were above 500 last year. Does Bordentown continue to compete? Do they slide into the middle of the pack? I really don't know.
Yeah, just to finish up Bordentown here, I think they're very similar to Cinnamonston. They lost those top guys, but they have the talent. They have the guys that can push them maybe a little bit forward or around the same mark. They have the guys that can fill those shoes that they're missing.
We'll move on and talk about the Maple Shade Wildcats. They're a team that I've really liked to watch over the last few years, and they're going to be a team that I think is going to have an interesting trajectory under Michael Webb. They, of course, have been trying to claw back to their 2021 season when they went 19 and 3. They actually went further this year, though, with only 13 wins, making it to the Group 1 semis in South Jersey. They beat Clayton, beat Pittman on the road, and then lost to Audubon 4-1. But I watched that Audubon Maple Shade game, and they played really well. I think that honestly, Maple Shade is a team that is very small, and they rally around each other. The big thing for me, though, Cole Mulcahy going into his senior year, he's one of my favorite players to watch. I think that he is a fantastic shortstop. He's got some great defensive chops, and he's going to pair really well. With Jordan Dromboski at second base as well. I don't know where exactly he's going to slide in, but I was watching some Prep Baseball New Jersey footage of Dombrowski, and he looked really good in as a sophomore. But the big thing, you still have the Blum twins, Chad Blum and Chase Blum, did decently well at the plate. Pitching wise, probably could use some work, but they had some decent pitching from Michael Smith, and obviously Connor Stratton and Alex Morales, though, were their two big guys. And we're going to say it like a broken record over and over again. This is another team that is good on offense, but got really decimated in the pitching department. Morales did really well. He was an interesting case. He was at Maple Shade as a sophomore, then transferred to PVI, and now came back to Maple Shade for his senior year, and he did pretty well. Had two homers, one of them versus Bordentown, and another one late in the season versus New Egypt, and then had a 2.59 ERA. But he was just like a big kid. He was somebody who, didn't look like your typical pitcher, but then he got a lot of zip on the curveballs. He's got a lot of great command, and he got a lot of strikeouts that way. One of the things that I think Maple Shade is going to have to fill in, though, is their catching position. They have Aaron Wells back. They had Aaron Wells backing up Preston Carey, but Preston Carey graduated. He's over at Eastern University now, and Preston Carey was just a fantastic catcher. He was somebody who was one of the best framers in all of South Jersey, and I know that that's not something that people really focus on, but that was his skill. He hit 310 at the plate as a senior, but he was able to frame super well, and Aaron Wells kind of platooned with him a little bit. I wonder how Wells is going to do as a senior, but Connor Stratton was a great two-way player, and we mentioned it before. Not only was he a goaltender or goalkeeper for the soccer team, but he also was a great bowling athlete as well. Had a high score of 258 during his senior year. And yes, I want to get into bowling at some point for our DWB audiences. So if you know a bowling coach, reach out. Let's get some broadcasts. But no, I mean Stratton and Morales were their two biggest guys, and then on the offense, they lost Preston Carey. I think that Kai Mattis is going to have another good season as well, but Cole Mulcahy really is the star of this team. 321 hitter last year, had a homer, 14 walks, 10 stolen bases, and a 464 slugging percentage. And again, the ERA was high, but a lot of the ERAs on Maple Shade's team were high under Mike Webb. 4.99 team ERA.
They played a lot of high-scoring games.
They played a lot of high-scoring games.
Yeah.
Had a few, look at this Deptford game. They had 14-11. The Burlington Township game was 22-10. 12-1 over Morristown Friends. I mean, even their playoff game was 9-6 over Pittman, and I remember that game because I was there. But it was very different for Maple Shade, and they're going to be a team that might have another trajectory like this again.
Yeah, Maple Shade last year, they shocked a lot of people. Not many people had them going to the Group 1 semi-finals and beating that Pittman team. Pittman, they thought it was their year. They had a lot of good talent, and we'll see how they do this year. They've kind of dropped off in every sport. But for Maple Shade, like you said, it's McCauley. They lost Carey. The Blum twins, they're going to have to step up a little bit this season. But pitching was high last year, but they still finished over 500, and they went to the Group 1 semis. So we'll see what they can do, and they're like a lot of teams we have talked about in the BCSL.
And another team that we want to highlight that has been an interesting case so far has been the Pennsauken Indians. Obviously, we talked about them with Sechuayo Bird. They were 15-9 in 2019. It was the last time that they were over 500. They went 2-14 last year. I mean, you don't need a rocket scientist to tell you that it wasn't great. But in the Rolando Gartier era, they've done their best. And we mentioned before that they kept close in a lot of games, and I think are going to, have another outlook this season. But the main player to watch for this Pennsauken team is Cohen Batista, 357 hitter last year. He had 3 homers as a sophomore, didn't have any this year, but in a hitter-friendly park, wouldn't be surprised if he leaves the yard a few more times in 26.
Yeah, he's their guy, and he's their best pitcher. He can't pitch every game, and I think that's why they went 2-14 last year. But just not the season they won it last year. They came off a division title in the year previous. They lost in the first round in a talented Group 4 to Eastern, but this was not the year they wanted. This was not the year we thought they had. I remember us talking last preseason. We're like, yeah, we're interested in seeing this team, and maybe they can go farther in Group 4. But they didn't have it. But we'll see what they do this year. But Batista, man, 357 hitter and a 2.28 ERA on the mound. He throws hard from the left side, and maybe they have some improvement this year. It's not going to be hard to have some improvement. They would only need 3 wins. But Joel Ventura, he's pretty good on the mound. Evan Kressel, the sophomore, he's a transfer from Canton Catholic over to Pennsauken. We'll see what he can do. He had a high ERA last year, but maybe he turns it around. The Indians, though, they
Yeah, I forgot about Cresthold, to be honest, but he's
yeah.
another good guy, especially as a left-handed pitcher, could really be used in some platoon situations, and that would be fun. But again, Pennsauken is a team that I don't want to rag on them, but they can really only go up from here.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is their best quality, is that, listen, you did not have a good season last year. You did not have a good season I mean, you had a good season in 2024. You were 12-8, lost to Eastern in the first round. I understand that, listen, there's a lot of things that happen, but they were 7-11 in 2023. But I think as well, people forget that in 2021 and 2022 they only won one game each,
Yep.
and that one game in 21 was over Penn Tech, and the one game in 2022 was over Penn Tech, a team that wasn't winning a lot either. So, and that was before they joined the BCSL as well. So for Penn Salkin, listen, again, 2-14 doesn't look great. Your two wins are over Holy Cross and Maple Shade at the end of the season. But I think you should stay positive in the sense that it can get better and it will get better if you put in the work. So I think that this team is talented. Didn't have too many seniors that they lost,
And
and
like you mentioned earlier, they played a lot of close games
they played
last
a
year.
lot of close
Yeah.
games versus good teams. 11-7 versus Doan Academy. 6-5 win over Holy Cross, 16-10 to a very good Glassboro team. When we talk about Tri County, Glassboro is going to be that one team that is going to stick out. Cinnaminson 1-0 loss, Maple Shade 1-0 loss, Bordentown 1-0 loss again, Florence 6-5. And Morristown, a solid Olympic team that went 8-3 in their division last year, only won their game by 3. So this is a Pennsauken team that's got potential. We just have to see it first, and that's the one thing that's holding them back. But the one team that we have not highlighted yet, or that we are going to highlight today, that we have not seen yet, are the Holy Cross Lancers. Now they're another team that went 7-16 in 2025, excuse me. But they were at the bottom of their division with a 1-7 record. They did not win that first game over Pennsauken, but I saw them over at the Trenton Thunder Ballpark in early April. They lost to Maple Shade 6-3. They showed some promise, and their big star, Luke Rogers, he's committed to Rutgers Camden, the junior last year. Only he had a 5.14 ERA, but I think that he got dealt a bad hand in the games that he played. So I really think just getting to watch the kid play. He had some great performances. Had 11 strikeouts versus Pennsauken. Gave up, a handful more earned runs than he probably should have. But that ERA was also inflated in that playoff game versus Gloucester Catholic that Holy Cross lost. He pitched 2 innings, gave up 7 runs. I don't know I'd have to do it after we stop recording what his ERA would be without that playoff game. But he had a 1.64 ERA in 25 frames as a sophomore. I certainly believe that Luke Rogers can do a lot better as a senior.
Yeah, he was thrown to the dogs, like you see. He pitched every game. Every time I turned up, it seemed like he was pitching every game. But Holy Cross, Zach Ford, he's a good coach. When I was at Seneca, we played them, and I talked to him a little bit. Great guy. But Holy Cross, uh, they're in a talent. They play a tough schedule. They challenge themselves. Like last year, Sterling had an unbelievable year.
Sterling was the underdogs in
Yeah.
South Jersey, yeah.
Collingswood with Miles DeVincentis last year, they were good. Haddon Township showed some. They even played Gloucester Catholic last year. That was in the playoffs,
Hmm.
though. But Holy Cross, they can only go up from here. They have the guys that they need. I mean, it's a private school that you can recruit, but they did lose Jeremiah Clare. He's actually at Seneca now. He transferred there.
And they lost Will Howell, too, who transferred to Paul Six.
Yeah, so they're losing guys that are transferring, but they also lost Liam Nessmeyer, who was great at the plate.
He's
But,
now at Valley Forge.
yeah, but like you said, Luke Rogers, he's fun to watch, and hopefully he has another good year for the Lancers.
Yeah, I think Cole Williams is going to have a good year. Shane Riley, a handful of sophomores that are going to be strong for Holy Cross. And again, this is another program that can only go up from here. They had a 7.85 ERA, which is never a number that you want to hear, but it was sixth highest in South Jersey last year. It's not a number that you want to have. And if Luke Rogers had a season more like his sophomore season, I think that Holy Cross can turn it around a lot better because we know, as we said with Kelvin Batista, no one guy can pitch every game.
Yeah.
But if he does, if he does slightly better in the games this season for Holy Cross, then yeah, I think that Holy Cross has a lot of potential, and I think that they're going to be good. If I would go in terms of divisional order, I think this is how we're going to close out these. I know I kind of threw a curveball on you, but I think if I'm going to do divisional order for the BCSL, I don't know exactly how I would do it, but let's bring up the window capture real quick as we get ready to close out this episode. So, looking at here we go. Let's get this ready. So we're going to go BCSL and the Freedom. Now, I don't know where you're exactly going to be on the Freedom, but I have Doan at number 1. and then I'm going to have Riverside over Palmyra 3, then Pemberton 4, Penn Tech 5. I don't know if you want to change anything to that.
No, good to me. Yep.
And then in the independents, we'll do. We'll actually inflate this picture a little bit. There we go. That's better.
I would do the Independents how they finished last year. West Tech, Medford Tech, Morristown Friends, Burlington City, Willingboro. Yeah, well,
Yeah, I would probably put Burlington City over Morristown Friends. That's the only thing I would change. But yeah, I'll put Burlington City third, and then Morristown Friends 4, and then Willingboro. Obviously, no STEM civics because that school closed. But and then the Liberty is where things get really serious. Northern Burlington, Burlington Township, Cinnamons, and Delran. Can we both agree Northern Burlington's easily going to be number 1?
um, yeah, unless you want hate comments or something.
unless we want bad mail sent to our address. So Northern Burlington 1. I think what's going to be interesting though is 2, 3, and 4. I think that if you want my honest opinion, Cinnamons and Delran are both going to leapfrog Burlington Township. As much as I think that Burlington Township is going to be a good team, they are the team that got hit the most by the senior class. Cinnamons and Delran at least have enough supporting cast members to to kind of turn it around. I think the Burlington Township is going to take a bit more of a step back than Cinnamons and Delran. So we'll put Burlington Township 4. Where do we put Cinnamons and Delran, though? Who do we think's going to have that edge?
Ooh, that's a tough one. You know I don't like these ranking things. Those two schools are rivals, man.
They just had a really tough wrestling match last night.
Yeah, I saw that.
Delran won, I believe.
They're very even, like we said when we were talking about both of them. I'm gonna have to go Delran ahead of them. I think Delran's got more depth in the pitching.
Okay, I think that I can agree with you with that. I think I can at least break the tie. I honestly would put Cinnamons in higher, but we'll do Delran 2, Cinnamons in 3, Burlington Township 4, and then we'll go back down to the Patriot. Where do we want to put? I mean, honestly, I think that this division is a lot closer than people make it out to be.
Yep.
Because even though Bordentown went 7-1, Florence was only 1 game away from winning that division, and Maple Shade wasn't too far behind them, and I think they're going to do pretty good. I think for Florence, they lost a little bit more in the senior class. I mean, they had R.J. Soban and Zach Soban, who both were near 300 hitters, but their pitching also took a hit. Josh Bacano graduated. Justin Marbach is a sophomore going into a junior year now, but they're 2 big pitchers. Josh Bacano and Zach Soban both graduated. I am personally, and this is going to be my opinion, I would put Bordentown 1, but then I would put Maple Shade 2 and Florence 3.
Yep.
And then what do we want to do? Do we want to put Pennsauken 4?
I would go Holy Cross 4. I think.
Okay.
I think they got a little bit more talent this year, and no disrespect to Pennsauken.
Of course.
But yeah.
Listen, when you do these rankings, somebody has to be at the bottom. So there's our BCSL.
50 this side are going to be mad. 50 are going to.
Yeah. Listen, this is why. This is why we host this podcast, because it's a way to stir discussion, and when it's. I honestly feel a little bit better when it's 2 people doing the rankings instead of just 1, because we can talk it out as like, why do you think this? Why do you agree with this? Because when it's just me doing the rankings, I think I can take a lot more. I think I get a lot more heat for it, because it is a situation where when you're doing a ranking of some kind, you are putting yourself out there to get flamed if it's wrong. But the only thing that will determine whether we are right or wrong is the actual season. And I think that baseball is one of those things that is so unpredictable that these rankings could be a complete crapshoot at the end of the season. But in football, if you don't predict the right division winner, then you probably aren't watching the game right. Because there's usually a lot more teams that are clearer to be divisional favorites. In baseball, think. Was that? I don't know what it was. My house is falling apart. But no, teams change around so much that we really don't know what is going to happen from March 23rd until the end of June or the end of May. So we'll just take one more look at these rankings again. Looking at the Freedom, Doan has the division lead, and then Independence will have West Hampton, Liberty will have Northern Burlington as always, and then Patriot will be Bordentown over Maple Shade. So. Next week, either next week or in the next 2 weeks, we'll go to the Cape Atlantic Conference, which I think is going to have a lot of great talent. I mean, nobody can dispute that the Cape Atlantic is one of the top South Jersey baseball conferences. St. Augustine's always going to be good. Mainland's always going to be good. I think it's going to be fun to discuss stuff below the American, like the National and the United. There's going to be some teams that I think are going to make a couple moves and surprise some people. But obviously, the Cal American is where a lot of our discussion will be with guys like St. Augustine, Mainland, Hamilton, the two Cumberland County teams, Vineland and Millville, and then Ocean City and EHT. So, your final thoughts before, because we talked a lot about the BCSL, and I think that there's a lot of teams that could really make some good progress in 2026.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of teams that are changing, and there's a lot of teams that are going to have to find these younger guys who have limited experience, but they'll gain it, and we'll see how they can do. The BCSL is going to be very talented in all three of those divisions, I think, this year.
I think they're gonna be competitive as well, and we thank you for joining us for episode 4 of the South Jersey Starting Nine. As always, we don't know the next time we will record, but it'll most likely be in the middle of the week, and we'll probably start ramping up episodes a little bit more as we get into the college baseball season, with practices having begun and games starting as quickly as next weekend. But we thank you for joining us. We thank you for indulging in our BCSL Burlington County Scholastic League rankings. Of course, next time, as we said, will be the Cape Atlantic League. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Again, this is a pre-recorded episode. We're going to be airing this at right around 5 p.m. today. I'm Dan Wilkins from my co-host David Cohen. Thank you, as always, for being with us. We will be back next week for the Cape Atlantic Conference. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching the South Jersey Starting Nine.